Bobby, how are you?
Good, bro. What's happening? How are you?
Oh, you're a sight for sore eyes, my friend.
Background. What is this? What is this? Bobby Blitz thing?
Absolutely. All happening.
Yeah, good for you.
How are
Sorry to
you,
get
my
you out of
friend?
bed so early. I realized that it's got to be like what 7 a.m. or something over there, right?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. We lost an hour overnight. Selfish bastards took it away with the end of daylight savings. But
So you're
all
on
good.
you're on a standard time now, or you're
Yes.
into daylight.
Yeah, back to standard time.
Okay.
So I get to go to work in the dark and come home in the dark for a few months. But at least it doesn't snow here. I can still get my ass on the Harley and get out every day, so that's a good thing.
Isn't that funny? I mean, people never get fucking tired of shoveling sunshine, do they? I mean,
Never. There's got to be a song in that.
yeah. I mean, I got to fucking, I'm up on top of a hill over a lake. It's a community, obviously, but there's, everybody's got about an acre or so. But I mean, you gotta have. I mean, we get this winter was decent, but I mean, I got plows, I got two snow blowers. I mean, you can't fuck around, or you're just stranded up here,
No, absolutely. And you're surrounded by lakes up there, aren't you? It's dotted with lakes around that region.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we may have talked about it in the past, but the whole Northwest New Jersey and into Pennsylvania is, it's just. I mean, it's not 1,000 lakes like I think they call Michigan, not Michigan, Minnesota, the land of 1,000 lakes. But this is all small, non-gas powered engines on the lake. I mean, you can have an electric fishing boat or something like that because they're just too small to absorb any of the pollution. But there's so many of them, and there's so much wildlife. I mean, the dog was chasing a bear the other night that just came
Oh,
out of
cool.
like nation. So, I mean, if you're into that kind of shit, I mean, if I'm like in Sydney or Melbourne or Tokyo or New York, I mean, that's all well and good to do shows, but to chill out, man, this is just you can't beat this shit.
Oh, absolutely. After a couple of months on the road, it'd be beautiful to come home to.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of home, my friend, can you believe it? The video you sent our oldest son for his 18th birthday during lockdown that just made his decade. He's turning 21 on the day of release of Scorch. So he sends his thanks for yet another magnificent present. And clearly you did it just for him. Well, according to him, anyway.
No, that was. I think I did it in front of the fireplace, didn't I? It was something
Yeah,
like I remember doing it in the living room or something. Yeah. So it's turning 21. What was that? It's 18th or 19th.
that was his 18th. So it's been that
All
long
right.
since all that happened. And God almighty, so much has happened since then.
So do we blame him for all
Yeah.
this shit that followed?
Well, look, it really was your prediction. Someone hit the big red button and the shit went viral. I mean, you couldn't have been more apt.
Yeah, I didn't mean to be so fucking prophetic. I mean, that's not yeah, that wasn't what I was trying to do. But geez, it was bound to happen somewhere, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it had to happen. But I mean, Scorched, album number 20 for Overkill. 20. What a magnificent achievement. Congratulations.
Hey, thanks, bro. I mean, that's I'm really not thinking about it in those terms. It's great that it really stands for the fact that my whole adult life I've been able to live like a juvenile delinquent, traveling around, traveling around the world, and and drinking coffee with Aussies while I'm having a beer, and enjoying and enjoying what I enjoy most, and I think that I can speak for the other guys with that too. I mean, it's not many people get to do 20 records, but 20 records for sure stands to some degree. I mean, even at this level, to for a life well lived. You know, for sure, blazing your own path.
You're always so humble about it, my friend, though. You can pump up the tires a bit and go, fuck yeah, 20 records. Let's see anyone else do that. Exactly. But let's go back a little ways.
Where's Fauci now?
If we go back a little ways here to we're headed into 2020 and our ears are still ringing in delight with Wings of War. And again, to quote your good self, the big red button was hit and off we went. How did all of this hit you? How did COVID, the lockdowns hit you, the band, and the creation of Scorched?
Well, obviously, like everyone else, I mean, you had to adjust. There wasn't like you didn't have any choice. It wasn't a matter of discussion about what you were going to do. You were going to do it remotely, like many
Mm,
people worked, during that period of time. They sat in their homes and they Zoom meetinged or they did their work remotely, and I guess we were prepared to some degree because we've always had a balance of both. At least when the technology changed, anyway, when everything was like digital and kind of blew up in the next phase into streaming, we're really streaming each other's tracks, back and forth to downloading tracks, me to Dee Dee to me to Dave to me, blah blah blah, Jason. So I guess we were prepared. Did I want to? Of course not. But I mean, I didn't want to because of the circumstances in general, not for the fact that I didn't think we could do it. It felt a little strange at first, but it was, when it started developing, man, it was just like any other record, just that had a set of fucking teeth, and we just started pushing it in a direction where it actually became salvation or something to look forward to, the normalcy and the normality of that
mm.
particular time. So to be able to put your hands around something tangible, or at least what appeared tangible during that fucking pandemic was just, it was just absolutely priceless. To have those songs, those records to be able to bite into.
Absolutely. And of course, you had time to breathe with this one to a certain degree. Not only the music going backwards and forwards, but as compared to the rest of the catalog, time to create. Do you think personally that translated in any way into the music for this album? Is it different to any way due to that time to create?
I think so. I mean, I think to some degree it is. I mean, it's you're always you're influenced by your surroundings or what's going on in your life at any particular time. You don't write a happy record, for instance, if you're going through an absolute horror show of shit in your own personal life. I mean, it bleeds through somewhere.
Mm,
I suppose staying humble, like you said, I mean, kind of gives you the opportunity to set yourself off on the right foot as opposed to the wrong one. For me, kind of a thing, or why does this happen to me? It's
mm,
happening to the whole fucking world. So I think somewhere in there, for on a personal level, I was writing negatively, and I never could see it. I couldn't see it until I said enough of this. That type of a feeling. And when I did realize that, I started tearing that shit down. And just doing like a redo. Let's figure this out. Let's go into a direction that is more representative of what we're about. And I think that that's a positive feeling. In as much as it's aggressive and can appear nasty. There's a positive pushback in this music that's been there for years, and I think it's one of the reasons people are attracted to it is that it's not a poor me type of a band. It's like, hey, we can get this done. Hey, let's put your head down, run through the wall, kind of a thing. Let's move some mountains together. And I think eventually that is what the spirit of the record took on, as opposed to Peter Pandemic and his happy little band of shitheads that were running around the world telling us to stay home.
Brilliant stuff. You remarked about this album that it's more heavy metal and less of an outright thrash record, to quote your good self, that there's a hell of a lot of melody on it. Do you think that was reflective of the times we were going through, or is it simply where the band is creatively reaching for almost a new level of maturity it comes across on the album?
Isn't that a dirty word, But I mean, I guess it's not dirty at 63. Maturity is be dirty at 55. What's the fucking difference, right? I suppose, the reality is that, there's somewhere over those 38 years or those 20 records that we've obviously become better songwriters from record to record. And I think that's, you add that to the pandemic, and that's what became reflective in this. But
Mm,
I think that really what happened was the riffs, are what's, spawned that, because there's still thrash there, and some of the thrash is very extreme, like Twist of the Wick or The Surgeon. But then you go into Wicked Place and you're getting into rock and roll, or you're going into Going Home or Won't Be Coming Back, and you got some traditional heavy metal in there that I think that we embrace because it's really part of it's part of the egg we were cracked from all the way back to the Love of the Scorpions or the Love of Judas Priest and those early records that inspired us to want to do this and especially for this amount of time. So I attribute it to the riffs showing up first, and then that melody following after that. Just like a marriage between the two.
Indeed. I know that Colin Richardson mixed Scorch as he did from the underground and below Necroshine. Actually, while I'm on it, I can't mention Necroshine without respectfully acknowledging the sad passing of Sebastian Marino in January. My condolences to you and the whole Overkill family, and to his family as well. He had such an impact on the Killing Kind, Underground, and Necroshine. Just very sad.
Yeah, thank you. He's a great guy, and it's funny. We were always in touch with him even after he left the band. He had purchased some property in Florida, but kept his business in New York. And I think up until the Grinding Wheel, we were still renting production from him to take on the road, and he would always make it a point to come down. We would always end in Jersey or in New York, and he would make it a point to come down and pick it up himself, so that he could spend the day with the guys. So there was always a great relationship there. It wasn't just 3 records and forgotten. He stayed part of this, our makeup, and we did business with him, as all the way down the road as far as we could have.
Absolutely, indeed, beautifully put. And as I go back and name a few brilliant collection, I have to ask about you and Dee Dee. On your way to a 50-year partnership, and as strong as ever, going by Scorch from a musical standpoint, do you ever just look at each other after all this time, after you two have been through so much over such a long journey, and say, seriously, 20 fucking records over 4 decades? I mean, does it just slap the pair of you from time to time?
He's a unique character. I think that's one of the the catalyst for this. I remember him doing an interview with a good buddy of ours, Ed Trunk, and Ed was, he's always the hypothetical. Let's throw in that hypothetical. Would you rather be in Twisted Sister and have 2 gigantic fucking records and put your stamp on music forever, right there, right then? And Twisted's been around forever. I mean, we know him from being a local band, even back in the early days. Or would you rather be an Overkill, and have X amount times X amount times X amount? And Dee Dee never hesitated and said, for me, he goes, for me, it's Overkill. He goes, I just got too many riffs to put down 2 records, and it just keeps coming. So it was never about the magnitude of the impact with regard to popularity. It's a matter of clearing the head, I think, for him. And I think it's one of the reasons that this continues, there's a great trust in the partnership. I mean, it's not like we fucking hang out all the time. We're very different people when it comes to most things, and I'm happy he doesn't speak English, or would be fucking arguing all.
Absolutely.
The relationship, it's a decent relationship. And his wife put the, I met his wife the day after I met Dee Dee. I mean, talk about commitment, right?
Yep.
In the world of non-commitment, and I'm not saying all, but it's easy to not commit as it is to commit. So I met his wife the day after I met him back in fucking 1980, okay. And we became great friends. And she said, and she did some great things too with her careers. And she said to me, it's very simple. She goes, you were brought up exactly the same way, with exactly second-generation American immigrant parents. You were brought up with big families, and you always put your families first. And she goes, if that was the case, why would this band not work out? There was never a fight. It was just, hey, somebody's sick, I can't do the tour. Oh, I can do the tour. Oh, this, that. It was always the family first, and I think the band itself just followed. It was just that simple. The family was taken care of. The band was going to be fine. And she was the one to put her finger on it. And I thought it was a very wise take on, something that now is transcended 4 decades.
Absolutely. I mean, it should be the definition of organic in the dictionary, really. Yes, it maps perfectly. But I'll go back a sec here, if I might. It's been 7 o'clock in the morning. My brain's not quite turned on, Bobby. I apologise for that. But the influence on the music, and you mentioned that there was that little bit of influence from other music creeping in. Do you think that might have transferred from the BPMD album and what you explored there with the covers?
I don't know specifically. I do know on the BPMD record, we'd all picked 2 songs, and I had picked a Cactus song, and the other one was a mountain song called Never in My Life. And, I was always aware of that song, and Dee Dee and I were going over it, a couple of years prior to that. And he's like, boy, you could fucking kill this, man. And why don't we just cover it? We were sitting in an airport somewhere in the Middle East, I mean, I don't know why I remember this, except that the coffee grounds were getting caught between my teeth. So I knew it had to be like Turkish coffee or something. but but it was like, you could really kill Never in My Life. And I was like, I could. I said, I mean, I would like to try it. Well, in any case, it went by the wayside for Overkill. So when BPMD came up, that was one of the choices I made because it always stood with me in my head. So I can't say BPMD influenced the Scorch record, but for sure, Dee Dee gave me the idea of doing Never in My Life for BPMD indirectly. But I mean, I jumped all over it because I agreed with him. I said, boy, this is right in my wheelhouse.
Absolutely. Oh, wasn't he right? Absolutely. It worked out brilliantly. And of course, I must ask you if there was some discussion about having Colin involved, given that he had worked on Underground, Necroshine, Bloodletting, and Killbox 13, as I recall. Was there special significance because of that, reaching back into the past a little bit? Is there significance to Colin mixing Scorched?
Well, I mean, I think it's, you can go home again. I mean, I think that's really the premise here. I mean, a lot of people say you can't go back and go to the same well without having, exactly the same results. I don't necessarily believe that. There was always a comfortability and trust with Colin, right from the Underground. I mean, I remember, picking him up at the airport, picked him up at JFK, and I brought him up to Connecticut. It's about, I guess, an hour, a little bit less. And he seemed like a great guy. He seemed, it's our first meeting. He seemed a little quiet and, a little reserved and polite. And I got to the studio and we all talked for 15 minutes. And he sat with the engineer and said, hey, can I hear the tracks? Just you and I, let the band leave. And we're like, yeah, sure, enjoy yourself. And we walked through the studio and we could see through the glass. And he was standing next to the control, in the control room next to the board doing like the Pete Townsend, whirly birds, playing air guitar. I looked at Vernie and I said, bro, we either just fucking hit fucking oil or we're fucked. There's going to be no in between here. This guy's either off the rocket or he's perfect for us. Turns out it was B. He was perfect for us. So going home to him with regard to Scorched and his new partner, Chris Clancy, it just seemed like the right thing to do. It wasn't, we had lined him up since 2019, since right after Wings of War. But, the point was we had to keep putting it off because of the pandemic. But he was right with the whole thing. But it wasn't for any reason except it was Colin. He makes great records. He's comfortable with us. We're comfortable with him. There's a huge amount of trust. And I think the results are in the final product. He did a great job. Some kind of a great duality of mix. The present day meets yesteryear. So it's kind of like being in two eras simultaneously with regard to production.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of production, I mean, I've got to ask you about the sensational artwork behind me here. It's just brilliant stuff, but I'm flanked here. Travis has really hit it out of the park yet again, but I've got to ask you, what does the cover art represent to you?
Well, duality of purpose. It also, it looks like conflict, but it can, I look at it all different ways. It also looks like a warning. It also looks like the guy on the left saying, we got to get the fuck out of here. And the guy on the right says, what'd you say?
I was going to ask if it's perhaps an image of you and Dee Dee discussing track sequencing. I wasn't sure.
Learning the fucking English.
Oh, I can only imagine behind the scenes, really.
If I still can bust a guy's balls fucking 40 years later, it means we've had a pretty good ride, if you know what I mean.
Oh my God, yes. Indeed. And what a partnership. I mean, whether it be music or the inherent business behind music, the joint effort, what advice would you say, or it's not advice, what would you say are the essential elements to such a successful partnership?
Well, I think it's way beyond that whole trust and thing. I think it's disagree because that spawns new ideas. But do so behind closed doors and always present yourself in one voice. You present yourself with strength then. You know, I mean, it's very common for someone to be in the situation that we're in or similar to and say, oh, I wouldn't have done this, you know, but so and so really want. And you immediately look at it as a weaker kind of a weaker approach to, you know, what the results are. You know, I mean, sure, the other guy might be right or this guy might be wrong or whatever it is, but the point is that, you know, when people hear that, that doesn't do anything for the collective personality of the band. And the collective personality of the band and this band has always been, to some degree, strength. It's that love us or hate us, we're giving it all we have, and we don't fucking air our dirty laundry in fucking public. And I think that there's something huge to be said for that, because we don't ever have to go back and apologize to each other, because the disagreements happen behind closed doors. And then by no means are they fuck you, I'm not playing with you anymore. They're kind of like, I think you're wrong. I think we need that tool. You know, that type of stuff. So I think that that's given us it's given us a negotiating position and a projection of strength, you know, that only becomes stronger as time goes on, because, you know, we're repeating that process of speaking in one voice.
Absolutely, indeed. And of course, being together involved from a start, there would be that inherent respect that would travel along with you. The constant success and righteous reign, if you will, of Overkill is the kings of thrash. It is testament to your masterful approach to both music and the music business again, and the inherent nature of it. But with a riff-ridden Overkill archetype track like The Surgeon being released as the assurance to the faithful that Overkill are as, if not more, brilliant than ever before, was just a stroke of genius. Was the first single a band decision, label decision, or an all in joint agreement?
That's fucking great. I couldn't have said that better myself. Oh my God, Rowan's just fucking, he is just out there spinning my bullshit now.
Thank you, my friend. I'm proud to.
Fucking Jesus, what a fucking introduction. It was, we talked it over. It was a couple of the guys' favorite songs, and you knew it was going to be because of the personality of the song, which is kind of the thrash template that we started for this band back decades ago. Except that template has been, you know, the parameters have been pushed left and right and up and down, so it's changed over those years. But we thought it was, in general, and I didn't have to talk to anybody about it because they were all going for that song anyway. This was the one I wanted, was The Surgeon. And I said, it shows that we're back. Yes. It shows that, you know, all things may change. You know, you may have lost people, and you know, there's awful shit that happened during this fucking pandemic, and you know, it took a little of your freedom away, and you know, you got spanked on your backside by your governments, and eventually we pushed back as hard as we all could, and change that situation to make things as normal as possible. And I think The Surgeon reflected that, because it was saying, hey, listen, man, it's been a few years, but you know, fret ye not. You're gonna door in, so get the fuck out of the way. And I thought it was a great choice for a first single. So I totally.
I think the words "fuck yeah" had coffee all over my screens when I heard it, but I'm glad to hear it was enough English out of DD there to say bass first. They should hear my bass first. But to follow up with the huge heavy groove and the toe, the massive musical appeal of Wicked Place is equally exciting. And I think, again, coffee came out my nose when I heard that. From the perspective of Overkill, not still creating killer signature offerings, but exploring and creating with diversity and keeping the sound developing. It's no wonder the two releases have been so well received. You must be incredibly proud of even just what these two tracks have done.
Well, sure. I mean, you know, the key to making a record is putting your stamp on it, whether it be us or whether it be another band. I mean, you want it to sound like you. Megadeth wants to sound like Megadeth. They don't want to sound like someone else. Overkill wants to sound like Overkill. And there's a few elements in there that make that sound recognizable. You know, Dee Dee's riff, maybe his bass tone, my voice, even Dave's leads to this point are identifiable characteristics of the band. But I think the diversity, I mean, that's part of that maturity thing that you talked about earlier, and maturity also equals age and experience. And I mean, something like Wicked Place is the shit I was singing in the fucking shower when I was a kid, or playing air guitar with my mom's tennis racket. You know, I mean, it was,
Yep.
that, I mean, this is Foghat on fucking steroids, or, I mean, even, Sabbath on meth. It's just got it's just got that, that 70s rock and roll dirt all over the goddamn thing. And so to be able to do the Surgeon with this kind of a, I can't say it's modern, but that thrash template we talked about before. And then, next to it, it's not so distant cousin is quite obviously Wicked Place, which is a blues ride, man. I mean, it's just a blues ride. And that is just so fun to be able to do, especially at this point in our careers, or this point in my life. And we've messed with it in the past. We've done Skull Crusher, we've done Horoscope, we did Head of a Pin on the last record. I mean, we like to swing back and forth. But there was something real special about this one coming out of the pandemic. It just felt like a fist.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a beautiful way to describe it. Really is. And is that, do you think, the underpinning secret to success? Not that I want to put this question to you in a is too much of a reflective way, but stay pure to what you love, and those like-minded will love what you do and will celebrate right beside you. Is that sort of the secret behind this journey?
My niece Katie is she's a school teacher now. She's in her mid to late 20s at this point. I guess she's 26. And when she was in high school, she had to do a project and interview the family, and the family's always been close. And so she interviewed my brother, her dad, who's an attorney, and her mom, who's a very high end nurse, and around my sisters and boyfriends and other family. And she got to me, and she says, I know you write songs, I know you tour, and I know you perform, and you do this whole band thing, but what do you really do? And I said, if you had to sum it up in a few sentences, I pride myself in alienating the masses and endearing myself to a small minority who likes exactly the same shit I like. He's like, I think I get it. I go, that'll never make me big, but it will let me do whatever the fuck I want from now until the end of time.
Absolutely. That's going to be tattooed on somebody soon. That's brilliant. It must be exciting to think, along with that enthusiasm for what you do and what you've done over, heading towards half a century. My God, it must be exciting to be preparing for the Scorching the Earth tour through Europe in just over 2 weeks. And we've spoken about live shows before being the real juice for you with Overkill, but how much did the lack of live shows really affect you during the shitdemic?
Ooh, nice little insert there. I like that. Well, that's always been my drug. I mean, I may have said it to you in the past. We've talked plenty of times. I've been chasing that high since the 80s, the live stuff. It's just the thing, it's a cherry on top of, the ice cream for me. It's just that extra that makes it all worthwhile, or becomes a motivation for it. Because when you do a record, I mean, and it is a diverse record. I don't know if the world fucking loves it. I love it. That's kind of the point. Maybe I'm a selfish bastard, but however it goes, it still feels dangerous to take this out on the road. And that was always the excitement back in the early days, was, hey, maybe they'll hate it, and that's kind of part of the reason you do it. Not that they will. I mean, you want them to love it, but you think that that's the danger. And the danger is what makes, I'm in a band, I'm in a gang. It's what is that, Bon Scott or Brian Johnson? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what makes it happen. So I'm really excited to be back on the road. And the lack of those shows during the pandemic, I mean, it was like it was like jonesing. It was like a withdrawal. You had this kind of, a guy did this interview with me from Switzerland. He's just a friend of mine. Can I have an interview during the pandemic? I'm like, what does he want to talk about? What am I going to tell him? Like, I learned how to make my own linguine and clam sauce. I mean, I just didn't know what I was there to, And he goes, what's the worst time of the band? And I said, oh, now I see where the interview's going. I said, it's right now, man. I said, we can't do what's normal for us, much like the rest of the world, what's normal for the rest of the world. So if we're all alike out there, or to some degree, I'm feeling what other people are feeling, they're feeling what I'm feeling, but I'm missing that, that high that I got, or that chasing, chasing that golden ring kind of a thing. Maybe you never get it, but damn it, chasing it's that's fun as fuck.
No, absolutely. Is there a yin to that yang? Is there a little bit of anxiety that goes to the other side of that excitement? Do you release records and have that little bit of internal, I'll be really shitty if they don't like it?
I think you hit it right in the head, man. It's of course there's anxiety, but that anxiety actually, it actually ferments and becomes, moonshine. It becomes like rocket fuel eventually. What starts as anxiety, and after you process it, actually becomes the fuel that feeds that fire to be able to get out there and do it. I mean, if it was just that fucking easy, wouldn't everybody fucking do it?
Yeah.
I've always said to anybody who's giving it like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, those kids would give their left pinky finger to do what you're doing for 10 fucking minutes.
Absolutely. You're an incredibly inspiring person in so many ways, doing what you love and making it pay, well, a bit. I mean, what did you say? If I set out to get rich, I really fucked that up. But seriously, man, so much of what you have done in your life is inspirational, which leads me to memoirs. We joked back, I think in 2020, that we would explore the Bobby running from the cops chapter when we write the book. But when the timing would seem perfect, do you have any plans for a memoir?
I've been asked and by some good friends of mine to do it. I mean, there was one of the guys who does everybody's memoir, was like, hey, we want to do a memoir. I'm like, forget it. I said, I'm not done with this. My secrets stay close to the vest until it stands over. But
Absolutely.
all my buddies asked me, and I said, maybe, as you can see in the interview and the relationship we've had over these years, I mean, I have stories about my niece. I have stories, all sorts of little things, little quips, quotes. I don't know if it's wisdom, but for sure, they highlight specific moments in life, and jumping off points, And I remember reading a book, and I may have even told you this. I got picked up, going into Australia. There was like the odd number guy or something, and then you got to go over to the border patrol, and you got to open your bags. 1 out of every 10 or something, random picking. But I was the guy, and it was like, I had a carton of Marlboros, and I had some CBD oil or something. I forget what I had in there. But I mean, I'm not really a drug guy, but I'm reading this book called What Would Keith Richards Do? And the whole thing is just quotes from Keith Richards. It's like, I don't have a drug problem, I have a police problem. I was like, that makes sense. so I'm sitting there with this guy with just a fucking spectacular Australian mustache, just coming out like this with wax in the end of it. And he goes, well, Mr. Ellsworth, do we have anything else in common with Mr. Richards? And I said, good for you for profiling me.
Brilliant stuff. And look, before our meeting is irreverently cut off here and the recording cuts out, I have to ask, you are really sorely missed by a lot of people in Australia. Is there any chance of possibly returning to scorch the earth for us down under?
Of course there is. I mean, it's, we have to figure out these, the parameters of, I don't know, what do they call it over here? Mr. Putin's gas tax? I don't fucking know. But the world seems to be some type of inflationary process right now that's not giving us all the resources we need to make long trips. So it's got to be done financially correct. We're, at this point, of course, we're talking about it. We were supposed to come over and do something. I think it was canceled by the pandemic. It was a cruise going out of Brisbane. That was like a 3 or 5 day thing that was very much patterned after the stuff that goes out of Miami and California for metal cruises. But that was blown out of the water because of Peter Pandemic, shitdemic. But we're talking about it for sure, as well as South America, as well as going back to Europe again, as well as, the US is going to happen in June, July. So we want to tour the world again. I mean, listen, man, there's more time behind me It's in front of me. So I'd like to get, I'd like to get my last licks in, if you know what I mean. And while I can still do it at a high level, with
Oh,
this,
God,
with the energy that we have in this interview and apply it to the stage. So yes, we are. I know that's a long way to say yes, but yes, we're planning to, and at least checking out the possibilities of this.
Oh, magnificent. We can't wait to see you back again. And if there is any way to celebrate a 20th album, Scorched is it. This belongs in every record collection as an example of what can happen after almost 5 decades, as an example of what all of these years of experience can culminate into. Scorched is absolutely the icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned. Over 20 albums. My sincere congratulations to you and all of Overkill. Magnificent work.
Man, I appreciate it. It's always great talking to you and catching up.